Every time I listen to these conversations and a black person's not involved, always,
Uh-oh.
she won't touch on because you don't know about is self-hatred. How many black people are racist against themselves?
No, none of these things are the reason, but that's why these are hard issues to solve. It's gotta be like 52 different things. Keeping black fathers out of jail, keeping black mothers from getting pregnant, providing access to childcare, providing good jobs so that mom is like happy, healthy, and can help her children, providing good funding to the school so they've got good textbooks, teachers that are excited to work those jobs and will inspire the kids, after school programs, older black men especially have access to good jobs so kids look around them and they see like, oh, what do other successful black adults that look like me do? They work jobs. If they all see them selling drugs and they're not gonna give a f about school or getting real work. And all of these things are like 5% of the issue. But like those answers are unsatisfying and it would take a ton of work from a lot of different directions to solve it. Progressives feel good when they throw money at black people and nothing happens, and conservatives feel good when they take money from black people and nothing happens. Where both sides mean well. Progressives want to help black people and they're gonna give them money to do it. And conservatives probably generally do think that like welfare is destroying black families, but like pattern recognition can start from racism. For instance, let's say I have 100 men named David and 100 men named Tyrone, and I take the 100 Davids and I give them $1 million, and I give the 100 Tyrones and I give them 40,000 in credit card debt, and then I ask people to start lending houses to people. Like lenders are at some point are like, okay, well, if you got the name Tyrone, I'm not gonna lend to you because you don't have money. Like it is just pattern recognition and it's valid, but like the origins are racist, so it's hard to just call it pattern recognition or just call it racism. What if the patterns are true though?
No, stop. Based. Thank you very much. Okay, right. Then are you justified in your racism? Would you say black people on average are way more racist than white people, by the way?
That's a hard one.
That's what she said.
I don't know.
By she, I'm talking about your mother.
I'm not sure.
You don't know?
The problem is, I would say that here's the issue. On average, maybe. The issue is that I feel like, here's what I feel like, okay? I feel like a lot of black people are kind of racist, but I feel like a few white people are really racist. So it's hard to say like who's worse. That's my feelings on it.
Wait, so let me break it down. So you're saying on average, more black people are racist, but the intensity of the racism within white people is greater, but their quantity is lower.
I feel like you could find a decent number of black people that would be like, F Mexicans for whatever reason. But I feel like you can find a few white people that are like, we literally need to export every Mexican out of this country because they're destroying America. I feel like a black person would be like, these Mexicans took my jobs, and white people would be like, we need to expel DACA children and send them back to Mexico. So like, I feel like on average, I think you could probably find more racist black people, but the white people that are racist are really fucking racist. That's just my uneducated take on it. I don't know what the stats are on that. That's just my feeling on it.
You know, I'll go against my MO and I'll agree with you. I actually agree with you. It makes sense. And I'd say this much. When it comes to minorities, the least successful and the most racist are black ones in the United States. Now, do you think that correlates, or do you think that's just like coincidence?
I think it probably correlates, but it's hard to say if it's coincidence because a lot of the issues are probably like caused the exact, like they come from similar places. Like I think black people are probably uniquely kind of hateful against some minorities, but black people are also like really uniquely, and I think you agree with this because this is kind of the argument you're making a tree. Black people were like uniquely f***ed over probably by the United States, right? Like even the whole like dichotomy of like just black people and just white people, like these categories were kind of sort of invented in America just to justify chattel slavery. Not to say that racism didn't exist in other parts of the world, it did, but like to the extent that we did slavery in the United States, it seems like the US was kind of like a world leader on that.
I agree. You're 100% right, but how long do you think that could last? That line of reasoning to justify
yeah,
their
that's the
actions or their views
issue.
on
So
things?
like this is a really hard question for people, and it's a funny one to ask people. So you'd be like, can white people say the N-word? Can white people say the N-word? And people are like, no. And it's like, okay, why not? Because of historical reasons, systematic racism, blah, blah, blah. Then you ask this question. If black people ever got to an area where they were like caught up with white people, would it be okay to say the N-word then? And then what does it mean? How do you know if black people are caught up? Because that's a really hard one for a lot of people to answer, I think. And like the question of like, when is racism over? And when is it just like people having problems? Because like, it's probably not the case that all racism in the country is, like the country's racist until black people are completely caught up, right? Like that's probably not the case. So it's, yeah, it's hard to figure the answer out. So,
I mean, when it comes to black people, always having a excuse as to why they're in the position, the economic position they're in. They say it's systemic racism. Now that's one I want to ask you about, because systemic racism does not say that, you know, America was racist in the fucking past. No, it says America is still racist. Its system is still designed to keep black people down.
No, that's
Do you
bullshit.
think that's true?
That's bullshit.
You don't think systemic racism is a real thing?
Depends on what systemic racism is, because people have like sometimes people have really stupid definitions of it, and they'll say, yeah, systemic racism means that we have systems that perpetuate real racism from the past. So we have fake racism today, but the fake racism is like very real, and it's perpetuating the real racism from the past, right? Like technically there aren't like racist policies today that make black people commit more crime or sell more drugs. That's not true. But it is absolutely the case that real racist policies in the past are what sorted black people into the poor communities that they live in now, and kind of like systemically impoverished them in the past, directly related to racism. So like that's what systemic racism means. I think it's that like there are systems in place that perpetuate the real racism from the past, not that people are still being racist today.
So I assume what you're talking about is like things like redlining and how it created the divide between hoods and suburbs and all that type of shit,
Yeah.
and how that still exists today because, you know, the majority black communities are fucking
Basically,
poor as shit, and
yeah.
the white ones
And
are.
even things like,
But how do you fix
do you
that?
know anything about like the Tulsa race riots or whatever, or like the Tulsa massacre?
Yeah, Black Wall Street and shit.
Yeah, you had like this was
that
the
what you're talking
highest
about?
concentration of black wealth that I think in terms of like net wealth per capita, I think was the highest area of concentrated black wealth in the entire history of the United States, even up to today. And that whole area was absolutely and completely fucking destroyed. And it wasn't because of their geography or anything, it was because of their race, right? So when shit like that happens, it's pretty hard to look at today and be like, oh, well, it's only class issues. Like I can understand why people today are like, well, no, we need to be like racial when we talk about this because it happened for racial reasons in the past.
I mean, that is fair, and the past does somewhat define the future, but let's say with things like affirmative action, do you think that was like something that actually made sense, like a step in the right direction, or was it like an overcorrection of the past?
I think affirmative action, nobody wants to admit it. Nobody wants to admit that affirmative action is good because it makes you sound like a loser, and white people will never admit that it's good, even though for white people, representation matters too. So I think one of the benefits of affirmative action is that representation is important, and people need to see people that look like them succeed, even if they're getting a little bit of a boost for it initially. White people don't have to think about this because they're like, white people are everywhere. So like if I want to be a doctor, I don't have to think like, oh, well, are white people doctors? Like that's retarded. As a spoiler alert for like the Jubilee episode that I'm doing, it's kind of funny. I don't know if they'll show it in order, but one of the topics that came up had to do with affirmative action. And obviously it was 4 black conservatives and 4 white liberals. All the black conservatives there were against affirmative action, and they didn't really agree with like representation being important and to push for it. But in a later question that was asked, one of the black conservatives that was there, he was quite young, he said that he was really inspired to get into conservative politics because of Ben Carson. And I didn't point out that like, isn't that kind of like representation right there? But like I thought it was a good example of like, yeah, representation is important. Yeah.
Your representation at whose expense though? Because affirmative action in itself does it not take away positions from more deserving candidates?
It can kind of, but then it's such a stupid joke, but it's kind of funny. Have you, or there's a little bit of truth to it. Have you heard of, I think it's a Chris Rock joke where he says that he doesn't believe in affirmative action. If somebody's more qualified, they shouldn't get a job just because, you know, of their race and blah, 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 blah. But if there's a tie, fuck them. They had a 300-year head start. That's like his kind of take on it, which is like kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of true. You know, it's kind of like saying like, is it fair? You know, is it fair that when we ask questions like, is it fair to have affirmative action? What we're doing when we ask that question is we're standing at the finish line and we're evaluating the racers as they come in. And we were like, okay, like let's make sure things are 100% fair right now. When the reality is the starting positions were completely unfair to begin with. So I don't know. I think like if you're doing like, if like 50% of your enrollments are affirmative action, that's probably not good and that's probably fucked. But if it's like some special side enrollments or a small consideration of everything, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. That like, bro, if you're a black person or if you're a woman or if you're some minority, you probably had to jump through some extra hoops to get here, and that should probably count for something.
The
Now y'all
problem with
got
that
me
is,
about to say some racist shit. Oh my god,
How'd you get
Oh, shit.
STVphilly in here
Oh,
about to say some
shit.
racist shit
Philly's
against
back.
white
What's
people?
good,
What
Philly?
the fuck?
go ahead.
No, I just got one thing to add. Y'all having a good conversation, so I'll let y'all have it. But the problem is every time I listen to these conversations about, you know, what you guys are talking about, and a black person's not involved, there's always something missing. Always.
Uh-oh, wait.
You guys mentioned almost
here we
everything,
go.
almost every
Go ahead,
aspect.
affirmative action. My bad. I'm
No,
sorry.
you
Go
just
ahead.
talked about that. You guys pretty much touched on everything. But what
Okay.
you won't touch on because you don't know about is self-hatred, self-racism. How many black people are racist against themselves? Now, I hear Destiny talk about this with white people, so he understands why it's a problem. But that also goes in the mix with everything you guys just talked about. But that is always something missing from these conversations. But go ahead, guys. Good conversation. Sorry.
Damn.
Wait, that's it?
He just came in here and he said no black people are involved in this conversation. How does that make you feel?
The fuck? I mean, he is right. I am not black. I'm Somali. Oh, speaking about black,
Oh, hold on.
Fossil. Undeaf him. I guess that's why he came in here. Or server mute him.
Hi, can I add something too? Yeah, all actually having a really good conversation, and I do have some talking points here. And sorry, I'm threatening to ruin your fucking optics all day. That's me. Anyway, so there is another thing that you guys are kind of glossing over, and it does have to do with the self-hatred aspect of the racism, which is let's see, the black people. I want to say this. I want to say it right. I'm sorry. I'm taking a little bit of time. STVphilly spoke on black people having hatred for themselves. In an abusive relationship, an abuser really, like, an abuser can't help their victim heal. All right, America has abused black people, really, like, and atrociously. You, Destiny talked on that and iterated on that.
I don't know if
well,
I understand where you're coming from. I don't want to cut you off.
what I'm saying is that an abuser, as America with reparations, cannot help black people if they don't want to help themselves, right? They have to let your abuser is coming and saying, "Oh, I see I beat your ass down. Let me help you up. Let me pick you up." Unless you're able to grab that hand, there's nothing you can do for yourself. And I think Q also like, this is where Q be coming from when he's saying, "Oh, the victim complex, blah blah blah." They want to have the victim complex and don't want to own up to what they what's been given to them. But I think that it's actually an onus on America to realize they have to let go of their white guilt. Honestly, like, it just comes from white guilt to think that affirmative action is something that could help a race after you've removed the concept of race from them, right? These black people need to, I mean, I'm honestly, this is the reparations argument. In a sense, it's like you just have to give them equal footing, because no matter what, affirmative action is coming from a place of like, my system is better, my system is whole, let me find a place to slot you in. And it's like, there's nowhere you can come from where that's not like looking down on or oppressing like a people, unless those people are willing to take that power and appreciate it alongside you, which black people are not willing to do at all, like, honestly. So
Well, Steve,
sorry
jump
for
in.
sorry for, like,
Reply to
mumbling and
Evil
shit.
Fossil now.
Get that shit in there.
Well, I don't know. What am I supposed to say? I disagree with all of that. I think
What?
What? Little Steve's autistic. You can't speak when he starts talking, or else he resets.
Nah,
give
he
him
in the
some
battle,
time.
bro.
He's rebooting right now. Okay. He's
I
running
just
a
wanted
fucking
to add, bro. He
Windows 84.
muted me, bro. I didn't even get to talk, bro. I'm a little.
I didn't mute you.
Come
Wait,
on,
what do you
man.
mean?
Nah, I did get muted, so I came in here and I'll just,
No,
because
he
I
said
said the
mute
I
me,
said the
muted.
silly shit. Nah, I did come in here trolling, bro. I said it.
True.
Black people was the fault, bro.
You
You had to shut
You're like,
you had to swat that
you,
shit.
Jesus.
Yeah, you almost fucking banned me. I know, sir. I was trolling. My
He
bad.
was taking it overly serious. He was like, "This is a serious conversation about the black people in my Discord."
Because it was
Yeah,
a
no, it
serious
was
conversation
serious.
about the black people in my Discord. Yes.
That's
It
what
was
I'm
so
saying.
serious. They both got a band at the end. Like, fuck them rats. Who gives a fuck?
I
Like,
think
it was too
I
serious.
think there is a way. There is a middle ground. There is a way to like compassionately help somebody where you're not doing the like cringy like white guilt shit. There is a way to do affirmative action and reparations and shit that's like in a really cringe, lame, whatever fucking way that is ultimately condescending and not helpful. or productive. I agree with that, but I think there are also ways to be compassionate and to help communities in a way that is like respectful and productive too. That's like ultimately better for everybody. That's what I think.
I agree.
You know,
I agree, but is that America's reality? I think America is generally going the cringe route.
I think
That's
if
the problem.
no, I agree. If America did have a reality forward where we kind of like tried to rectify like racial inequities, it would have to come from that position. Right now, it's conservatives that just don't give a fuck about it, and then it's progressives that are trying to like reparations in fucking California or San Francisco or whatever.
you better move there, Fossil. That's all I'm gonna do. If I were you, okay, move there, get the free money. I'll say this: the problem with the with what you guys are saying is basically fucking the what's it called? I forgot. I just had it in my mind where it's like equal outcome and equal opportunity. That's what it is. Affirmative action, the way that it's done feels like it's equal outcome where like no matter how fucking well a black person does or how much like how well a white person does, like if we're trying to hit a quota, we're gonna give it to the fucking black guy even though, you know, they're less deserving when it should technically fucking be, or it should be, I should say, giving them better opportunities. So, you know what I mean?
Well, but
They
I think
then
that's
get
what
the
affirmative
fucking
action is trying to do.
white
Like equal outcomes would be like affirmative action giving somebody a degree, right? But affirmative action is supposed to be the opportunity to go to a nice college and perform well and have that opportunity,
No,
right?
but they're starting from the end line, basically. Like you said, they're starting from the finish line. If they started from the fucking schools that a lot of African American people go to, or hey, Tree, I'm sorry, a lot of black Americans go to, right? If they start from there and they start fucking trying to give them the best education possible from the beginning, I think that would be way fairer because then
I
like, the
agree.
white
I agree
person-
with you, but
Okay.
at primary school is really hard because I don't even know like it's kind of on the school, but there's like so many other factors that go into like how do you educate a person that young? Like those kids sometimes are fucked before they even get into the classroom. And it's a bit different with college because as sad as it sounds, you've already kind of filtered a lot of those huge problems out, you know?
That's fair. I'd say this much, right? If we're talking about reparations, the greatest form of reparation is actually fixing the communities within instead of giving people a handout, right? Incentive. I mean, this just sounds like reverse redlining, but at the same time, it is the truth. Incentivize fucking businesses to invest in these communities. The government should probably invest in these communities because you are right. Most of the time, it starts from the home, and if your home is broken, like no matter how much your schooling is great, you're still gonna be right? If you have to take care of a crackhead mom and you have an absentee father, you're probably gonna have a lot more disadvantages than the white kid that comes from, you know, a two-parent household. I agree with you, but at the same time, I believe that you should invest in the communities, you should build them up.
Yeah,
and then
I think
eventually wouldn't-
we all agree with that. But the reality is there's a myth in the United States sometimes among progressives and maybe even other people in the world that like America hates its minority, it doesn't invest in our communities and blah blah blah. America does invest a ton in certain communities, but it's not always just a money thing, unfortunately, right? Like I think there are, when I looked at this last time, there are like communities in the United States whose school system sucks, and some of them are like the highest paid like per capita fucking student like in the entire United States. There are like here's like a stat that I don't think a lot of people are familiar with. Private schools almost always outperform dramatically public schools, but private school teachers get paid less, right? So that's like, it's not just like a pay teachers more and they'll do better type of thing. It's like there's something else going on there. And there are certain, I remember like for OPS, all my public schools, like people would like argue over like what do we need to do to solve things, and I don't think that the money spent always correlated with like educational outcomes. Now I will say some school districts are probably just like underfunded. If you can't afford like textbooks and shit, then your shit is fucked, of course. But I don't think it's just a matter of like, oh, we need to spend way more money and then everything will be okay.
But are you talking to the general or to the fucking anomalies right now?
I think I'm
That's what
talking to
trying
the
figure
general.
out.
I think so.
So generally, you believe that it's not a fucking.
I don't think it's just a
put more
funding
money
thing.
into
I think there's a
schools.
lot more going on with it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'd
so-
have to agree, bro, because you know, in NYC, bro, the school system here is atrocious, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the most highly funded. Well, don't quote me on that. I'm being a bit evil, bro. It's NYC. You spend a lot, but I do know that the incentives for those school districts to like spend money has literally nothing to do. Like what they, since it's made by the New York City Board of Ed, they made a department for the school and divided them up to districts, and the way that they get they funded is not really in result of what the children need. Like It's more so about what repairs need to be done, or like the how to just be in the city in the first place, right? To be a building in the city in the first place is most of the money go to just doing shit like that. So even like the money and the amount of funding that will go into a system might look a certain way, but like they're not actually building what makes a community, right? They're not making or putting the money towards, higher fund teachers or people who are more involved with the community, like after school programs and all of that kind of stuff. And you know, bro, that stuff have been absent from even now. Well, I wouldn't say now. It's actually getting better, especially in the city. I know y'all think the city is crazy and OD, but there's a lot of communities, tight knit communities, and community centers being built in the city, and people coming together to make sure that there's like community centers for children, especially like daycares and stuff like that. Bro, that stuff has been
Why is it
non-existent for
community
black people
funded?
for a long.
Hold on.
Yes.
Awesome. Community funded. Yeah, but obviously, I'm talking about like on the government side of things, and clearly,
But when I
I
say
don't think
community
any-
funded, I mean the government. I mean you get
Oh,
grants
okay.
from the government. Like all you have to do is come together as a community unit, though. Like a
Okay.
church or a nonprofit can come
Okay.
together.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, okay, but my problem is right now that clearly you see it as like nobody agrees with the system. I don't think even you, Lil Steve, you don't agree with affirmative action, or you think there could be a better system in place. You don't think it's the right move. But I hear a lot of problems, but no solutions being offered. So clearly, you shut down the fucking whole, invest into the communities instead of like paying out reparations in the millions to each African American, even though technically some of these people probably like how the did you?
Because the challenging part is the people that push against the bad solutions lie. And they say they want to get rid of the bad solutions. In reality, they want no solutions. So the biggest people that fight against affirmative action are just conservatives that don't want to fucking do anything. It's like the same conservatives that say shit like, oh, like why are we sending all this money to Ukraine when we should be helping people in Hawaii? These fucking retards don't want to help people in Hawaii. They just want to defund the Ukrainian shit. So that's the issue, is that generally the largest advocates against these programs don't give a fuck about these communities at all, and they don't want to do anything about them at all. So
Okay, wait, that's fair. That's fair, but their intentions could be malicious or from a wrong place, right? But are they wrong though?
What do you mean?
The United States be investing into their own people when they have a fucking homelessness
yes,
crisis?
they
going
are.
in
No,
their
no, 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 no.
population?
They are wrong because we do invest in our own people. We spend a ton of money on entitlements in the United States, and none of these people
What?
even have any idea about the type of money we do spend.
Okay, let me ask you this, and I don't know, so I'm asking you. You know what I mean? How much would it cost to end homelessness in the United States? Like if the government decided to put X amount of money towards it,
I don't
how much
know.
would
I don't
they
know
need
if
to do?
anybody knows. But again, homelessness, it's like schools. Homelessness is not just a money problem. There's like a community will problem too. Like where do we build like the treatment centers? Do we even have treatment centers? Where do we house them? Where do we give them jobs at? Do we have the political will to sustain the taxes necessary to like, yeah, that's like all part of that goes into it. And like what even like leads to homelessness, and do we want to do anything to rectify those problems I don't know, it's challenging.
I mean, what's weird to me about the United States is which department is responsible for the infrastructure of the United States? I'm sure there's like a name for it or some shit, right? Like, is there not like
It's
a
not the
fucking
Department of
that's
Transportation. What is it? What is infrastructure in the United? It's probably shared among a lot of them, like the EP.
so
who
like
does
the
like
highways
who does
and,
highways?
like, all that. Yeah. So the problem with the United
It
States
might
is
that might
it's-
even be that might generally be like states that do infrastructure. Actually, that might be the case. It's mainly a state issue, like
Is
each of
it?
our provinces. Yeah, not our federal government.
Sure, but the thing is, within the United States itself, like I think infrastructure is one of the biggest or like bigger issues where a lot of your fucking highways, a lot of your roads, a lot of that shit probably needs fucking, redoing. You need to fucking work on that shit again. Like there's so many critical places in the United States that money could be put into, but instead, it's being sent to the fucking Ukraine, for instance.
No.
Or
Hold
it's
on.
being-
Wait. Hold on. Real quick. That's just not how our budget works. Like whether we do or don't send money to Ukraine has absolutely no bearing on whether we spend money on anything else ever. That's just never true. And anytime we
Okay.
anytime we do go to spend money on ourselves, it's always the same people fighting against Ukraine that fight against us doing it. So it doesn't make any sense for them to say that. Like we did the American Reinvestment Plan or whatever, and that was like almost $2 trillion of stimulus investment into the United States. Conservatives hated it. That got weaseled down initially from $6 trillion, right? So we spent $2 trillion on Americans. Conservatives hated it, and now they're mad that we sent. Now, because they don't like spending money domestically. They just don't want to do that.
No, stop. No, wait. What? Like, because the devil's in the details, right?
No,
what was in the details that made them
what
hate
they
it?
don't like is they don't like the idea of government spending because they want a fiscally responsible government. They want to balance the budget. That's why. So these same people that are scoffing at sending, $20 billion in cash to Ukraine are like, why don't we spend on our own people? We do spend our own people, but you hated it. They just want us to not spend money, period. That's what they want, but they won't say that. So they say we should spend money on ourselves as Ukraine. You don't spend money on anybody. Just say that, you loser. They want to do austerity. Which is fine. You can make arguments for it, but they're not honest about it. That's why. So like all the people I'm against affirmative action. Why? Because it's not the best way to solve the problem. Okay, how do you want to solve the problem? Get rid of rap music. That's what they'll say. They don't have any real solutions either.
Okay, that's what they'd say. What would you say?
There has to be like a huge, I think education, in my opinion, elementary school education is like an investment in a child from year zero. So it has to be empowering moms to live in safe and healthy areas. It has to be empowering moms to have access to things like childcare. Empowering women, actually, we can even say before birth, empowering the Black community to have access and education related to contraceptives and abortion is also incredibly important to prevent accidental babies. Probably getting rid of nonviolent drug offenses, that probably helps a bit, so you can keep Black fathers out of jail for getting busted for fucking weed. That probably creates a lot of...
is that the reason why most Black fathers are absentee because of?
Hold on. So you're doing the thing. Yeah, this is what conservatives do. Okay?
My bad. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. No. Okay,
when you say, is this the reason? No, none of these things are the reason, but that's why these are hard issues to solve. There's not a one silver bullet. It's got to be 52 different things. It's got to start with the help of...
Multifaceted approach, all of that.
Where every single one of these issues is 5%. So keeping Black fathers out of jail, keeping Black mothers from getting pregnant, providing access to childcare, providing good jobs so that mom is happy, healthy, and can help her children, providing good funding to the school so they've got good textbooks, providing teachers that are excited to work those jobs and will inspire the kids, good after school programs, areas where older Black men especially have access to good jobs, so kids look around them and they see oh, what do other successful Black adults that look like me do? They work jobs. If they all see them selling drugs, they're not going to give a fuck about school or getting real work because they see that's their path, right? And all of these things are 5% of the issue, but those answers are unsatisfying, and it would take a ton of work from a lot of different directions to solve it, and that's just challenging.
Is it more challenging than what's already being done?
No, because what's being done right now is a good fight that makes progressives feel good when they throw money at Black people and nothing happens, and conservatives feel good when they take money from Black people and nothing happens. And it's just all a big virtue signal fuck fest, where both sides mean well. Progressives want to help Black people and they give them money, they'll do it. And conservatives probably generally do think that welfare is destroying Black families, but the sides are both very simplistic in their approach to the issue, so nothing actually gets solved, I think.
Random point. Do you think that tax exemptions should be one of the things that help the Black community as well?
I think it
as a possible solution.
Sure. I think that helps. Sure.
Eventually, how many things need to be done towards assisting the Black community for the excuse, or I shouldn't say excuse, because it is a valid reason to me. Listen, trust me, I've watched enough documentaries about slavery, and I always used to think to myself, I'm surprised these people don't riot every single day. I'll be honest, right?
True.
But if you just look at it, right, the slavery argument is not going to last forever, and eventually something needs to fucking be done.
I agree.
And right now,
I agree that it won't, but also some of these things probably lag a lot too, right? Now, I'm super fucking white, so what can I say? But my guess is gonna be that even if you're a Black kid from a single family, from the fucking hood, growing up in the worst case scenario, it might be the case that a kid like that growing up, in the past, listening to NWA and fucking Ice Cube and all this shit or whatever the fuck, if they listen to all this shit, maybe that same kid growing up today, if he happens to listen to Kendrick, maybe he turns out a little bit different, right? Maybe the culture lags behind the maybe the outcomes lag behind the culture a little bit, and things kind of change and shit as time goes on. So maybe we don't see it now, but hopefully things are changing a bit. I joke about this, But I do think it's kind of true. It is endearing when people online, when black people online are like, this is some insane racism. My teacher today, like, you know, read the word negro in a textbook. Or today, like, I saw a white dude wearing dreads.
You're saying that I can't have a hairstyle because of your culture? Why?
Because it's my culture. You know what box means.
Do you know it was an Egyptian culture? Are you Egyptian? Nah, bro, you're not. Are you Egyptian?
Are you Egyptian?
No, but it doesn't matter.
Wait, where's Egypt? Tell me.
You know what, girl?
Where's Egypt?
Dude, go. You have no right to tell me what I can not get. Huh?
Where's Egypt?
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now.
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now. Come back.
Get off of me.
Come back, come back, come back. You put your hands on me, no words.
Like, you know, make some
hands
shit
on
because
me.
of what the hair I have? That's no reason, yo. I don't need your disrespect. I don't need your disrespect.
Why are you filming this?
For everyone's safety.
But if you're a black person and that's your big experience with racism, bro, you've got like ancestors in chains that are like smiling down upon you like, holy shit, you've got it so good if these are your problems today. So like, it sucks, but I think it is getting better. It's just really hard to see because it lags behind the culture so much, in my opinion, you know?
I mean, I don't think any
Destiny
black
really
person
is a
in
good
good faith
person,
is.
bro.
Shut up.
You really are a
Don't
good person.
dick suck fossil. Don't do
Nah,
that. Don't
bro,
do that.
it's not about that. Bro, why can't you just tell people when
No.
they actually care, bro? You do care, bro.
Dude, this is the
care.
most fucking
you
like.
remember? Do
Right.
you remember my solution for the black people, bro, and the white people?
What,
First,
send them
I
back
don't
to
want them
Africa, put
touching-
them on
no,
ships?
No, I don't
What?
want white people anywhere near us anymore. Just give us all the money ever. Let us spend it on our values and watch us dilapidate instantly. And the strongest will prevail, bro. And we move on. Like
Oh, yeah,
that's how
fuck
we.
financial
That's
literacy,
literally how we. That's how we had to survive under racism in the first place. So why not just give it to us with infinite money, bro? It just
Oh,
seems
that's
like
how
they
you-
just don't want us to have money.
Okay, this is what I'll say. This is what I'll say about black people. I think no black person in good faith is gonna argue that they have it worse today than they did like 50, 60, 70 years ago. Although some of them do act like that, right? When they fucking cry about this fucking guy in Discord changed their name to fucking Black Supremacy Court or whatever the fuck. Yeah, that's retarded.
Sure, that is
At the
true,
same
but I
time,
think one other just a quick issue that's like really difficult, and I understand a lot. This sounds insensitive saying this as a white person, but I think that like 40 or 50 years ago, if you got over on some shit and you're a black person, I super get why you're looking sideways at like why the federal government have to come in and tell these fucking union workers to let me work the same jobs the other white people are. Why am I not getting these jobs? Why am I not getting these loans, right? Like, life is hard already, and life was really hard for black people because they were black people. But that mind rot, which is mind rotting, right? Kanye West said it, and it's true. Slavery is a mindset to some extent. These things are mindsets. That mind rot is carried over today, unfortunately, to where now you've got black people sometimes who, like, anything, something happens, even if sometimes you just get over, it's like, that was some racism. And I think that sort of mindset in and of itself, I think, can actually hold people back and like mentally people over from making more progress, because they are starting to see racism everywhere when it's not actually bad. So I agree with what you're saying, where like black people say like, oh no, it's not as bad as it was before. But I think if you stuck a white kid and a black kid in the same situation and they both got over for the same reasons, the white kid would be like, oh, I up, I need to do better. But the black kid would be like, there was some racism afoot here. I need to see who I can talk to like fix this, which is a really, really detrimental mindset in my opinion. Sorry, God.
So no, let me say this real quick, and let me ask you this much. Would you say the biggest issue, yes or no, right? And you could build up on it. Would you say the biggest issue with the black community is one of culture and one of mentality? Yes or
Yeah,
no?
a little bit, yeah. But culture is bred from circumstances, right?
It is.
That's
but at the
part
same
of
time, you
why
also
it's funny because,
acknowledge
like,
the fact that they're taking the path into the future.
Which
It
in
is,
America
it is, but, like-
literally just money, bro.
So like one of the things that I do is like I make fun a lot of like Nation of Islam people and kind of like the Africanism where they go back and they want to rewrite their history and say all this shit was African, blah, blah, blah. There is a reason for that I don't really talk about. And the reason why is because Jesus Christ, I've listened to Immortal Technique talk about this, okay? So excuse my cringe. But like, it's not necessarily in African history for everybody to always be poor and destitute. That when European people existed and started exploiting other nations, like this is I want to say newish in the past like several hundred years, but like that idea of like one group of people of a certain skin color totally over other people is relatively recent. When black people feel like their entire system is in poverty and their entire history and culture is in poverty, then of course the art that they make is going to reflect reflect that, right? And I think that's an issue to where like you've got like Jewish people who are super proud of their history. You can take Jewish people and stick them anywhere and they're going to find a way to claw themselves out and succeed because of like the history of their culture. But you take black people as African Americans in the United States, they don't have a history other than poverty and slavery. So when you look at the art they create, it represents that culture of poverty and slavery. So, but then to turn around and be like, the problem is your culture, you stupid. It's like, well, yeah, of course it's their culture. That because we took it from them. That's all they have, you know. So I agree that like
this,
you don't agree. Yeah, go for it. Or what?
Because he's right. He's right, but like where the value I think is lining up. Like, all right, so the fact that you're saying we don't have a history is baked into the American narrative, but the fact that our shit has been stolen is our history. Like, black people are allowed to own what they've been through, and I get that. Oh, the struggle is real. It ain't like something to build up on, but when you literally don't even have like. When I have to have a conversation, I can't stand having to constantly say this shit. But like for me, when people could talk about where they food come from, the lands that they've seen, like the literal physical manifestations of fucking earth that they've been like visiting and looking at, the fucking words that they're able to speak, the way their family have grown up, all this shit that got to deal with their heritage and culture has been ripped out of us. But when it comes for a black person, it's about their music and it's about the like way they dance and shit, even though all of that stuff was also extracted from us by America and actually was the ones who decided which one of or what of our culture had value. Like, it's not us that decided that stuff. And also, as people who didn't have a grasp over their culture or autonomy over their living, how are people like that supposed to be the arbiters of what their culture even says? So when I'm young and I hear music blasting on the radio that I got from the white man, playing the white man station, how am I supposed to be, even though it's a black voice coming from it, how am I supposed to know that there's somebody, you know, down the block possibly singing something more wholesome that will hold me together, unless I have the cultural structure or something that I can go around and visit and deal with, which was absent from America because of.
Well, but I think like we would say that like if we look at like rap music as a whole, like it is changing, right? Like significantly, right? If we compare like Kendrick Lamar to what existed in like the 90s, we're talking like we're talking like Shakespeare versus like 4chan, right? Like it's significantly changed.
Okay, it's not that.
It is that. No. It is that significant. Like it is a huge difference in terms of quality, in terms of like artistic merit, in terms of like in terms of like the experience we're writing about everything. I think it is like that. Like the difference between that type of rap is like night and day, right? Like I think there's a lot of like if you could get rid of like the bad words, right? Like no, I can't say this. Like I'll say that like growing up, actually I don't know because I don't have any like conservative black friends anymore, but like I've said this, like growing up, the conservative black households that I knew weren't allowed ever to listen to rap music, ever. More white houses I knew in my Catholic school district could listen to rap music than fucking black conservative households. I wonder today if black conservative households would let their kids listen to like J. Cole and shit. The only real change come from inside. You know?
Probably not, to be honest, because they see it all under the same umbrella, because they don't think of the one person or the two artists that are doing it differently than the rest. They just lump them all together with the I don't know, the 6ix9ines or the Drakes or like the fucking.
I mean, is it just the one or two? Like even Kanye West never really rapped about like gangster shit. Like even Kanye West is like, follow Jesus saves and new slaves.
No more living for the culture. We nobody's slave.
That's
like,
the new
Destiny,
Kanye.
can I ask you a hypothetical?
That's the new Kanye.
It might be.
No, wait. Oh, also wait, real quick. That's not the new Kanye. No, Kanye never rapped about like gang shit ever.
Yeah, but you're only think about who you're pointing towards. You're pointing towards Kendrick, Kanye. I'm telling you, the vast majority of artists, rappers, are not Cole, are not Kendrick, are not Kanye. They're not any of these guys.
I don't know. Aren't the biggest ones that? Like Kanye, Drake, J. Cole, like Kendrick is
raps about gang shit. He literally has a song called Mob Ties, number 1. Number 2, fucking, what's it called? Future, one of the most popular niggas. 21 Savage, one of the most popular niggas.
Look at Tyler, the Creator, like 21
Tyler, the Creator rap.
How many people done doubted you? Left you out to rap.
Tyler,
Yo,
the Creator
before y'all
rap.
splurge over this, I'll be out. Let me just ask you.
Yeah, go for it.
That's if you got if it makes sense. If it don't, just tell me I'm stupid. Get me out of here. all right, if you pause white, all right, the hypothetical is that if you pause white culture or life, like cultural life, whatever you look at it, like the whole system of how you grow up as a white person and acquire wealth and stability, all that. If you pause that for 100 years and then you just let black people keep running on our society for 100 years, will we catch up? Like, will we become equal? Like, if white people was to be able, like, if it was just some way to just stasis all of it, all income, all everything, like Thanos snap basically, and then like black people was able to just use the same structure and everything would still run, and we would just have 100 years.
Oh sure, yeah, you're just
acquiring wealth
hypothetical.
and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I don't think it would take 100 years, but yeah, I think so.
You really think white people have a 100-year head start?
It's not
Not
just like-
100, but I'm just being hyperbolic, bro. Like, yeah,
Oh,
it's just
Jesus.
any level of time. I'm just saying whether the hypothetical was to make him understand, well, not understand, but to see if we both agree that progress is being made. Like,
Yeah, but why would
literally,
why would he
regardless-
disagree though? Why would he disagree?
Because
Like, that's-
if oppression or racism was still a thing, then we wouldn't catch up. Like the
It
society,
wouldn't
the
be a
system
thing if you
that
paused white
freezes.
people. If you paused white people, it wouldn't be, right?
No, because we're talking about systematic racism. So whether the
That
white
comes
people have
from the
the
white
intention
man,
or
though.
not, no, you know, because the thing is that a lot of white people who, like, if a white person like looked at my name and didn't choose me, like the reasons they do that is could be systematic for me, but like not racist for them. You understand? That's what like systematic racism means. So like most black people aren't dealing with like
Oh,
actual
you know what?
people coming at them being
Fossil.
racist and
Fossil.
swatting them out of
Fossil.
opportunity.
Fossil, what you sound like right now is when niggas say it's not racism, it's pattern recognition, right? When people say, "Oh,
Yeah,
the reason why this woman crossed the street, or the reason why people don't want to deal with this kind of person or that kind of person, is just pattern recognition." By the way, Lil Steve, do you agree with that shit? I'm curious.
Yeah,
Or
I
you
do.
just
I
believe
do.
it's blat-
I do.
All right,
but
I'm out
like,
of here. Gang, gang.
All right, Fossil, take care, buddy.
yeah, I
Go
agree
ahead.
that it's just
Go ahead,
pattern
Lil Steve.
recognition, but the problem is the pattern recognition can start from racism. So, for instance, let's say I have 100 men named David and 100 men named Tyrone, and I take the 100 Davids and I give them $1 million, and I give the 100 Tyrones and I give them 40,000 in credit card debt, and then I ask people to start lending houses to people. Like, lenders are at some point are like, okay, well, if you got the name Tyrone, I'm not gonna lend to you because you don't have money. Now, is that racism? I mean, if initially the reason why I gave David the money and Tyrone the debt was a racist reason, I mean, is it? I don't know. It's hard. Like, it is just pattern recognition and it's valid, but like the origins are racist. So it's hard to just call it pattern recognition or just call it racism. Yeah.
No, I think that's a hard example to contend with. So I'll simplify it. I'll present an easier one. Let's say, you know, you're looking at fucking applications, job applications, and you have a fucking black sounding name and a white sounding name. What would compel somebody to deny the black person but accept the white person? Because why would pattern recognition come into effect in that scenario, for instance? Because there's no debt, there's no give that person $1 million and give that person 40,000 in debt. It's nothing of that sort. It's just the
Because you've been
difference in name.
exposed to people with a certain name that have a certain amount of wealth, depending on like what they're called, right?
Yeah, but you recognizing that pattern in itself makes you racist because it has nothing to do with the validity of this person's application.
It might.
Don't you think so?
Maybe, but like, let's say for instance, like, I guess like these are hard questions, but like, you get accused of a false rape accusation or something, and
Okay.
now your life is on the line, and you need to figure out like what you're gonna do, and you know you've got 2 law firms, and you know one guy that represents you is gonna be like Jerome Washington, and the other guy representing you is gonna be called like Rod Rosenstein.
Okay, dude. Go ahead. I'm enjoying this.
If you look at them both, and they seem pretty equal. Like, this is kind of the argument that people made about like, you know, like choosing doctors and shit too. Like, I agree that it's not good. Like, you probably should go by qualifications, and depending on the area that you're in, it might be that like the minority person is even more qualified because of whatever random shit they had to go through to get there. don't remember which. This is a long time ago. I remember some comedian had a joke about like the most dangerous person in like a black gang in the hood is a white dude because he probably had to do some wacky shit to get accepted, like shit like that. Yeah. So I mean, it might be the case that like if you see like a fucking a black doctor or a female pilot or a female engineer or some shit, she might have had to do some fucking wacky and wild shit to like prove herself at that point. I don't know if that's true or not always, but I know back when my mom was in the Air Force, I know my mom said that she was like. That like the woman who worked in the Air Force back in the like 60s and 70s and 80s and shit, like these women, no, it would have been in the 70s and 80s, I think, that these women like super busted their ass because you were always having to prove to yourself over and over again to like male superiors that you were supposed to be taken seriously and shit. So, but I mean,
it's hard when you say things like that because you said on one end you said systemic racism. I don't fucking believe in that bullshit, and I tend to agree with you. I could kind of see where you're coming from. But at the same time, you point out things such as you having to deal with a person overlooking you just based off of your name. And you brought up the example of the lawyers. You fucking have the Rosenstein, whatever. And then you have the Jerome. And the Jerome probably is more qualified just knowing his background or just assuming, which is, again, hilariously, you just assumed that Jerome had to overcome more obstacles based off of their, race
potentially,
whereas the other guy had it potentially, correct? But you assumed these things and yet you still decided to go with the other one that you thought was more fitting of the position. Don't you think like this inherently, this racism that comes from within is put into you at some point, at some time, due to either the household that you're raised in or the school that you went to or the environment or society that you're born in? And if that's true, does it not fucking mean that there's systemic racism somewhere in place?
I mean,
you get where I'm coming from?
What if the patterns are true though?
Okay, no, stop. Based. Thank you very much. Okay, right. Then are you justified in your racism?
Well, is it racism? I don't even know. Maybe there's some racism that like what about like a woman walks into a room and there's a woman in there or a man in there and she assumes that the man is going to be more violent than the woman, right? Is that sexism? I don't know if anybody would call it sexism, but I think most people would say it's somewhat justified, right?
No, but yeah, but you're not fucking harming or putting the man down. Like you'd assume, okay, I'm not safe around this guy. You would then take yourself out of that position. But in these other instances, you're either taking a client away from the lawyer or you're denying a job application for the man that could have deserved it, but you discounted them based off of their name. And when it comes to pattern recognition, there's two ways that I feel about it, right? If it's experiences that you face, right? So let's say you've met 10 black people, right? Lil Steve, you met 10 black people and you've had 10 terrible experiences with 10 black people. I really can't fault you if you saw the 11th black person and felt some type of way. Could I? Like, truly, think about it. Could I fault you? Could I tell you, like if you said, stay away from that guy, I'd be like, yo, you've never met this guy, it's the first time. Yeah, but I've met 10 motherfuckers like him. You know what I mean? Would you say it's justified in that instance? Being racist towards that person?
I don't know. It's really hard. Though I go back to the woman example because women justify. Here's the thing: women justify, and progressives at large are super okay with sexism towards men. And really disgusting sexism towards men. Like, if I were to say I'm really uncomfortable leaving a black person alone in my house, who's an acquaintance, because I've had a black person steal from me in the past. Every single person would say easily, like, oh, okay, you're a fucking racist. That's a horrible thing to say. But if a woman was like, I'm really uncomfortable when my roommates bring a male friend over and they leave him alone for a little bit in the house because of a past, like, traumatic experience with men, everybody was like, yeah, that's totally fair, like, to feel, like, unsafe or whatever. Like, what, you're going to treat all men as racists. So, yeah, there's a huge double standard there, and I'm not sure if, like, maybe it's the case that, like, it is okay to be racist or sexist sometimes, or it's understandable to be racist or sexist sometimes. I don't know what the answer is there.
I mean, pointing out the double standard is fair because it is existent and it is very hypocritical on their end to do so. But I don't think it addresses the question at hand, right? You said you don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to get
when you say it is hypocritical,
yes
but like
no.
the problem is that like it's challenging. It's challenging because it's like is it okay?
They're not equal, by the way.
Yeah,
they're not
because it feels intuitively like, yeah, I mean, like, would I really fault a woman? Would I fault a woman for feeling uncomfortable alone with her? Yeah, probably not. But like you say, trying to be safe. Would I fault, like, let's say you've just got a white dude that was born and raised in Alabama. The only black people he's seen are rappers and criminals and shit on movies and shit. Like, am I faulting him if he's trying to keep his family or his property safe, like by being scared of black people? Like, because it seems like it's very easy to be condemning of the racist white guy, but of like the sexist woman that just assumes a guy's gonna fucking rape her. like that's actually super okay. I mean, in a way, I'd be kind of offended. Like if you assume I'm gonna fucking rape you, but like I'm actually conditioned to not be offended. I'm actually conditioned in society. I'm conditioned to think women can think of me as a pedophile. If I'm at a park with my son and another kid comes running up to me and I gotta pick him up, like, oof, a woman doesn't have to think twice about that. As a man, I kind of gotta think about it. I don't anymore because Nathan's obviously older, and I am a pedophile, so I don't care. But like, and then it's also the same. It's also the same when you look at like men around women. I'm conditioned to expect like, okay, if I'm with a woman, like, there's a chance you could think I'm a fucking racist, or I'm sorry, a fucking racist. So like, I do have to take that into account. But like, for black people, we don't say that like, well, I mean, black people will probably say to other black people, but societally, we don't think it's acceptable to condition black people like, hey, listen, you know, some people are just going to treat you as a criminal. It's okay. It's understandable if they do that, you know?
Unironically, though, you were justifying the red pill movement because the red pill is the one that points out that double standard, that hypocrisy where men get seen in a certain light, men get put down, men get like, for instance, you go to the park, you pick up your kid, and now you're getting looked at like you're a pedophile, or a woman suddenly feels uncomfortable around you, and she's totally justified in feeling so, right? So I guess, funny enough, that is a justification for the red pill, at least the honest form of it, not the one that just calls all women hoes and shit. That's
sure.
retarded.
I mean, like the red pill is fully justified in that, like, there absolutely are fucking double standards between men and women in society. Like that's undeniably fucking true, and there absolutely is a culture.
Tackle the racism, though.
What?
No.
Oh no, I'm just saying that
tackle
like
the racism.
don't imply that like I think that like the red pill doesn't make any good points. Like that we definitely lived in a society of like way too much yas queening, like fucking hardcore. I'm not gonna fucking deny that. Absolutely, that's true. But like the problem is all the other things they say are fucking retarded. Then, but yeah.
If you were forced without having to, and you could if you want to, you could get into it deeper, but without having to, you know, provide justification. If you were forced to give an answer to whether, you know, pattern recognition is justified and due to like racism that's based on pattern recognition is justified, yes or no, what would you say?
If I would say pattern, I would say it is racism. Are you asking me if it's justified?
Yeah, would you be cool with it? Would you understand it? Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, I don't know, man. That's really hard. I don't know how to think about it.
When I asked for a yes or no, of course it's hard. That's why I'm asking.
I don't know. I have to think about it. If I get a call from a random number and I pick up the phone and the guy's like, "Hello, I would like to talk to you," I'd be like, "I'm hanging up immediately." But like, I don't know. Does that make me racist? I don't know. Maybe it's a guy that works at fucking Microsoft who wants to give me a free copy of Windows 10. I don't know. Fuck, like I might be
Whatever
right
it
now.
is.
Yeah, I could
Imagine
be.
if
Right?
Microsoft don't hire Indians because of that reason. Would
I
they
don't
be
know.
racist?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Wait, I think you're gonna have to like maybe more clearly define what you mean by racism, because like as it's usually defined, racism is the idea that like certain races are superior to other races. So like, yeah, understanding that there are more Indian scammers that do telephone calls as opposed to, I don't know, white American dudes, that's not racist.
Well, I would say that racism is when you take
superior to another race.
I don't think racism is necessarily race superior. I think racism is when you take a trait that broadly belongs to some group and then you apply that to a specific individual.
Individuals.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like, for instance, if I go up to an
absolutely.
Asian friend, I'm like, "Can you like work on some shit for me?" And they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because you're really good at math." And the guy's like, "I failed like algebra. Like, why would you someone good at math?" Oh, because Asians are good at math. That's like a racist thing to do.
That sounds a little bit more like stereotyping to me.
Yeah, stereotyping based on race, which is, I think, racism, right?
Well, sure.
Not everything. Wait, hold on. Do you agree with the statement that not everything racial is racist?
No.
So, for instance,
Yeah.
No, I think it's all racist. Like black people and
Well,
big
you
dicks
both
and all that
disagree.
shit. I think that's racist. Right, go on.
wait, vegan gays, do you disagree? Why?
No, I didn't disagree.
You didn't disagree? Oh, I thought
just-
you did.
Like, just because there's a racial aspect to some types of stereotyping, I wouldn't say that's racist. Like again,
So it's not-
I understand that there's more Indian scammers who do these telephone calls than white people. That is stereotyping, but I mean, like,
But it's
at
not racist.
least in my personal experience, I can recognize that pattern. It might be stereotyping, but it doesn't come along with this idea that Indian people are inferior to white people or my race or anything.
No,
Aren't
that's
they
your
kind of
definition
inferior
racism,
because like
though.
they couldn't work that job? Like you'd rather have a white person work that job.
True. True. That's why Microsoft probably don't hire them niggas. And would they be racist if they wouldn't hire them? Honestly, I would say probably not. Because at that point, nobody's gonna fucking pick up the phone. They'll just assume that they're talking to some scammer.
I think Microsoft does actually employ a lot of Indian people for tech support.
tech support, like
Yeah,
as
but
in,
they're
all the
they're like
customer
American indie people. They're like they sound like me. I
with
think
an
I'm-
American accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny if they did hire like an Indian dude with an Indian accent. Like
Well, if they're an
what would be
H-1B
hilarious?
worker, I mean, they they might
Yeah,
actually.
imagine if they hired him and then they compared the amount of calls that get fucking, hung up on him versus the other people.
Well, dude,
Then we'd
what's
actually
funny
fucking get that.
is, what's funny is I live in Ontario. Like, there's just a lot of Indian people who live here, and just a lot of Middle Eastern people in general. And anytime like I get a call from the bank, I like just have to hang up and then like actually call the bank because a lot of the time they're Indian, and I've been scammed by Indian
Jesus
people
Christ.
before.
Okay, that sounds just
Trying to
racist.
pretend
What
that
the
they're
fuck?
That sounds crazy.
That just sounds
Like-
racist.
It's not though.
Wait, so when you call your bank's official number and the guy picks up and he's got an Indian accent, you call back?
No, I'm saying no. When I call my bank's official number and I hear an Indian person, I know it's not a scam because I'm calling my bank.
Oh, okay.
But if an Indian person were to call claiming they're my bank, they might have like stolen some information from me. And some of these scams are pretty sophisticated. Like, so I have been fooled once. And like now as a rule, like if I hear an Indian person claiming to be from my bank, I just hang up and then I call my bank.
Wait, I'm just curious. If white people applied that same rule to black people, they just kind of assume they were going to be like a thief or something, would you think that's okay, or?
Sorry, what's the scenario?
Scenario is 4 people enter a store. 1 of them's black, 3 of them is white. You tell loss prevention, hey, can you just like follow around the black person and make sure they don't steal anything?
I think it really depends because
So you've
a
had black
lot of
shoplifters in the past.
Well, it like again, it depends because there is a lot of situations where white people don't actually interact with a lot of black people, and their exposure to black people is like maybe rap music or some crime dramas where black people are portrayed as like gangsters or thieves and stuff. And then they have that stereotype when they actually see black people. If there is an area where there's like a lot of fucking black dudes for whatever reason who commit these thefts, and every other like race or ethnicity in that area doesn't really do that, I wouldn't consider that racist. Like,
I mean, at that
you know,
point, like, isn't that, haven't you just justified literally all racism? Because isn't that basically all racism?
Well, no. Like that's more of a like again, this is more of a cultural thing. It's not really a racial thing.
Well, because like most racism isn't like somebody like I sat down, I did the research, I hate black people. Usually it's like you just have shitty exposure to them in media. You don't know many of them in real life. For any ethnic group, not just black people, anybody. Isn't that where most racism comes from?
I'm not sure, but I don't see how it's really related to this. Like, again, I don't see an issue with just obvious pattern recognition. Again, if you're a store owner and the only people you ever have a problem with are black people, it's not even necessarily a racist thing. It's just that you're recognizing that there's certain people from this area that have a certain culture who do this thing.
How would you know it's the culture though? That you just assumed it's the culture. They might just be black.
Or
That's
actually,
about it.
that's true. But also,
Well-
let's wait. On the flip side of that, let's say that a person walks into a store and they're black, and then they find that because isn't that why cops pull over black people in nice cars? What if you're just like a normal black guy, you don't do any crime, you don't do any weird shit, and now you're getting like followed everywhere, and it's because people assume that you're like everybody else. Like you don't think that black person might feel like I'm having a racist experience, or?
Well, yeah, again, usually when it comes to that sort of police discrimination, it is not justified.
Wait, how? You just said the store owner that dealt with, criminals always being black is justified.
Well,
in,
again, again, like, I don't see an issue where if you're actually only having a problem with certain clientele, and then recognizing that maybe you should be a little more cautious around them, I don't see that as a racist issue. When it comes to cops, they don't. So, if you look at a lot of the, like, ticketing in certain areas, like, black people are followed for multiple blocks, until they commit some sort of traffic infraction or they fabricate a traffic infraction. So they're not actually committing, they're not committing any kind of crime, and they use some sort of pretext to actually stop them. And again, oftentimes these black people in these areas don't commit certain crime, like at least certain crimes, more often than other races. You especially see that when it comes to traffic infractions.
Okay, so what you're saying is if the cop that pulled over the black person in the nice car did it because in that area there's been a high number of car thefts by, black people, then it would be fair for him to do so. Correct?
No. Like again, when it comes to policing specifically, you have to have some sort of evidence of a crime being committed. Just a black person in a nice car isn't evidence of a crime.
Yeah, but don't you think when the store owner is sending somebody to follow the black people around the store because he's had a couple of black people steal from him, don't you think that he should at least wait to see some suspicious activity before he decides to follow them too? Like, you have a different standard for the store owner and the policeman.
Well,
you're not following
obviously,
the
I'm going to
same
have a
standard for each.
different standard for store owner and police. Like the issue with policing is there are actually legal standards that they have to abide by, and if they're going to make a traffic stop like this, there has to be some sort of evidence of a crime being committed. A store owner doesn't have those responsibilities, so if they're suspicious of certain clientele and they have fair reason to be, because again, certain people from a certain culture are doing these sorts of things, that's a lot different than pretextual stops.
But I think we're not on the same page because they're talking about legality and like the morality of them doing it. Excluding legality, because you are correct, law enforcement officers probably need to have probable cause or at least a valid legal reason to stop the person.
Well, wait. I'm not really just making a legal argument. I am making a moral argument. So when the police stop you in a car, that is a violation of your rights if they are detaining you for no reason. If there's no evidence of a crime,
they're not detaining you. Stopping
that
is
is a
not detaining.
detainment. That is a detainment.
In the United States, if you're like stopped by a cop and you can't leave while they're performing an investigation, that's what we consider being detained in the United States. Detaining and arresting are two different things. Or explaining for Q.
Okay.
So it's not an arrest; it's a detainment. So that does violate your rights. If there is no reasonable suspicion of a crime being committed or about to be committed, that is violating your rights.
But what's a reasonable suspicion in this?
Sorry?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Whereas if somebody is just following you around in the store, in no way is that violating your rights.
Okay, here's the thing. Without taking it back, because you are correct, right? When you said the point about the detainment, without taking it back to that, morally, right? If the fucking store owner is following you all over the place without seeing you do anything, and the reason he's doing so is because there's been a couple of fucking times that he's got his shit stolen due to the fact that, oh, I didn't follow these people, they were black, and now every single time I gotta follow a black person. If the law enforcement officer is doing the exact same thing, right? And there's some bolo out on a car that a black person happens to be driving, that's reasonable doubt as well, and that makes both scenarios equal in my eye. Because how is it not equal then?
Real quick, just as a legal definition, when he says reasonable suspicion, he doesn't mean that in terms of what's a reasonable thing to suspect somebody of. Reasonable suspicion is a standard in the United States whereby you suspect somebody of having committed a crime. That's what he means. And
okay, in the example, I modified the example. I said, let's say that the car, a similar car of the similar type, color, whatever, was reported stolen, and then the police officer immediately stopped the black person.
Well, yeah.
Then, sure, it would be justified. You wouldn't say that it's f***ed in any way. Right?
Well, the reason for the stop is because there are details of the investigation that would logically lead an officer to conclude that it is possible a crime is being committed. But it has nothing to do with them being black.
Okay, there you go, correct. And in the store's case, right, the simple fact that you're following somebody around, because nobody, by the way, I don't think people are super careful around their children with white guys, even though the vast majority of pedophiles are white guys. Nobody says you gotta start because what I'm trying to point out to you is pattern recognition apparently only starts working with minorities, right? Nobody says be careful around this person. They're a fucking pedophile. Oh no, it's just a fucking white guy. And in this instance, you're justifying this store owner following this random black guy around because he's been robbed by other black people. Would you do the exact same thing for a white guy just because most pedophiles happen to be white?
Okay. When you're talking about that stereotype in particular, more people are cautious about older white men for pedophilia than for people of any other race.
But they don't start profiling them the same way that you described, with the store owner having somebody follow the black people around the store. Maybe
Okay,
maybe they
well-
feel some type of way about them, but they don't do what you said they would do with the black people.
Well, my issue is if a store owner is following somebody around the store, that is in no way violating their rights. They can still go into the store, they can still buy whatever they want, and it doesn't inconvenience them in any way. And like, I mean, this is kind of a
You think
This
so?
is kind of a
It's not
problem
an
that-
inconvenience?
no.
I think it would be. If somebody's following me around for the simple fact that I fit the description of some other niggas that I have nothing to do with whatsoever, I would think that this is fucked. Like, I think any reasonable person would.
Well,
Right?
yeah, I mean,
And
I
you always take it back to
personally,
white, by the way. I'm talking morally here. I'm not even, because you take it to like obviously with the police officer there is a legal duty and then there's a moral duty. Like, I want to create a separation between those two things, right? When I'm talking about the store owner, I'm talking like morally for him to do so, right? Because again, racism goes back to morals. It's not illegal to be racist, correct? So it goes back to morals. Morally, he's absolutely 100% in the wrong to do so if he's treating me some type of way based off some other person's action. And that's the problem with pattern recognition. It starts punishing people that share common characteristics with somebody just for the
Okay,
simple fact that they might be
so-
similar.
I like when stores have policies where they say no shirt, no shoes, no service. Do you think that is profiling, like an immoral type of profiling?
No,
No,
because it's targeted behavior, not a
targeted at
race.
somebody. Yeah, it's not uniquely targeted at a single race for the simple fact that they are that race.
Well, right.
It's
Well,
even for
right.
everybody.
Like the reason. Okay, but it is targeting a certain type of person who
It's
like,
targeting a
dresses
behavior.
certain way,
It's
or-
targeting behavior.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not tied to race. And
Like that's
the-
interesting having a sign that says like no shoplifting versus no black people. Like the no shoplifting
Yeah.
sign is fine, even if the
Or
majority
like
of
no
Well,
shirt,
right,
yeah,
but-
like no shirt, no dreads or some shit like. Then I'd be like, okay, dude, who the fuck are you trying to keep out of your store, right?
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
it was some shit like that, then I'd be like, okay, it's a bit weird. But like no shirt, no shoes, like that makes sense.
Yeah, so
That's-
I can understand why somebody would be personally offended by somebody following you around in a store and assuming you might be up to something because of what somebody else did. But again, it's not necessarily unreasonable when you have a lot to lose and you are seeing a pattern where only a certain group of people are doing this.
I feel like you're
And
just
like this
yeah.
seems like by the way, this seems like a problem that kind of solves itself. If you're shopping at that store regularly and they see that you're cool, they're just not going to bother you anymore in all
not
likelihood.
true. No,
And
not true.
usually, and by the way, usually
Absolutely not true. I have
you
personal experience
see.
with that shit.
By the way, usually you see like everybody fucking stealing shit. Like if you ever look at somebody who works at like 7-Eleven or a gas station or something, everybody fucking tries to steal shit. So if these people are particularly targeting black people, they probably are just racist.
Wait, you're
but,
betraying
like-
your original stance right now. Your original
No, I'm
stance was
not.
no. It's you said it was pattern recognition. It's not racist.
Yeah, I wouldn't say by definition it's racist. Like, I mean, if you, like, let's say you owned a Quickie Mart, and literally every single theft that's ever occurred is always black people, no other clientele steal. Is it really unreasonable in that kind of situation to maybe be a little bit more cautious around black people?
I would say no. My personal opinion is no. But at the same time, I also recognize that that is from a place of ignorance because you would recognize, or you would at least say that it's not the fact that they're black that's
Yeah.
causing them to steal.
Well,
It's
right.
where they're from, and like it's way deeper than the color
Well,
of their
yeah,
skin. But
that's-
that's the easiest
well-
thing to like recognize, right? And that's why you profile them.
That's why I also tied this to culture. Like, I'm not assuming they're stealing because they're black. I'm assuming it's just because the black people who live in this area might, I don't know, be more involved in crime or something. But it's not because they're black that they're stealing. I think the issue you have is that some people assume because they're black they're stealing, and then they develop these racist ideas that black people are thieves or something.
And
But,
while that's
I mean,
true and while that's crazy, I have to take off because I need to sleep. I actually don't need to sleep. I've got a ton of things I need to do.
All right, take care.
Love you. See you later.